what you're working on at the moment?
Yes. I have a show at the gallery PSM that I am curating together with an Italian artist called Paolo Chiasera. And well, basically I curated a painting. It's an exhibition painting. Paolo has this series of works where he paints imaginary exhibitions. And these exhibitions, he paints them in oil and in very large paintings. And he invited me, and I think that's a new step for him as well. He invited me to be a curator of this imaginary exhibition that he is painting. And because we have been in touch for a while, I suggested that we base this exhibition on our conversation. And we found this work by René Magritte, which is called The Art of Conversation. And you have two people who are standing in front of a huge pile of stones that looks a little bit like a contemporary Stonehenge. And buried at the bottom of the stones is the word dream, the rêve in French, rêve, the dream. And if you see this construction, you wonder, where does the conversation come into this? So is it that the conversation is built on a dream, or is actually the conversation keeping the dream down, keeping the dream from staying a dream? It's a beautiful image, and this work also appears in this exhibition. The exhibition has the same title as Magritte's painting, The Art of Conversation. So actually it connects nicely to what you are doing here, with us conversing like this. This idea of conversation comes up in many of the works that we selected. So for example, we selected a work by Oscar Tuazon, where he refers to Scott Burton and his furniture sculptures. There is another work by Louise Lawler in the exhibition that refers to Eileen Gray. And of course, Louise Lawler, with her work of using artworks in her own work, is or has been a great influence on this whole thing. The bigger picture had to do with relating this idea of a conversation to, like how far a conversation can expand. As we are doing this here, technically. And I found this wonderful image that shows the Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore visiting Albert Einstein in his summer house outside of Berlin on the lake. And you see these two, classic cultural personalities of the first half of the 20th century standing next to each other in the summer house, and how they, even, by the way that they pose and represent themselves, reflect on completely different areas of culture, mysticism and ratio, to make it, to oversimplify it a lot. But so they actually had several conversations, and it is interesting to see these conversations were actually written down by Tagore's secretary. So they're on the internet, you can find them easily. And what is funny about these conversations is that you have the feeling that they are trying to communicate very hard, but like somehow they really have difficulties because they're talking about completely different things. And so in the end, they say, well, it is very difficult to judge the quality of music. And so in the end, in a sense, they actually say, well, we had this conversation, but we didn't really connect. But then again, this not connecting has actually inspired both to write new works. For example, Einstein wrote a beautiful essay, which is called Mein Weltbild, so my image of the world, or my concept of the world, where he actually tries to bring together, like his, of course, at that time, extremely radical views on reality and how physics determine reality, and his own, personal cultural background. And so these are like the things that we're trying to bring together there. So maybe just one last example, and I know I'm stretching the time here a little bit. Another work in the show is a piece called also by an Italian artist, Riccardo Previdi, and Riccardo has these works called tatamis, which are basically projection screens, but they're kind of they're perforated, so they're just strips of projection screens. So half of the projection goes into the space and scans the space. So he designed one tatami for us for this exhibition, on which we are going to screen. Well, we are not going to screen because it's not there, but it's only in the painting, of course. But on which we are seeing in the painting a projection of a work from Bangladesh, where also Tagore has come from, by an artist, Naeem Mohaiemen, who's from Bangladesh, living in New York at the moment, called The United Red Army. And in this film that Naeem did, which is going to premiere, which has its European premiere in the Amsterdam Film Festival later in November. This film is actually very, very interesting on this topic of conversation, because the film is based, or most of the film is based, merely on the conversation between the United Red Army from Japan, the Japanese terrorists, hijacking a plane and bringing it to Dhaka airport. And in Dhaka, the authorities are trying to negotiate with the hijackers. And both speak in a language which is not their own, because they have to communicate in English. And the Japanese hijackers, who are very young, don't speak English very well. So they're having a really hard time conversing, and it's all marred by big technical difficulties. So in this film, most of the time, you're sitting in darkness and you're just hearing their conversation over the intercom, you know, the tower and the airplane, and you have a transcript of what they're saying in case you don't get it, like under the screen. So of course, at the end, it is also like the conversation that you have in front of a piece of art as a viewer with the artist or the curator who's not there. And one last thing before I forget, which is we invited Matthew Antezzo, the American artist, to do an exhibition design for the painting. So it will be a very large painting set into an exhibition design by Matthew Antezzo.